that would be me as a man. And Laura started putting me on a journey on my emotion and how to communicate. So I'm still in the midst of that.
Great.
And
So how far along are you in that journey in terms of attempting to learn how to put feelings into words?
I'm in my 11th year of that.
Okay.
So, before that time, I thought I had it all together.
Okay.
Only to realize that, no, I don't.
Actually, I think we do have it together from God's point of view, but it's not necessarily all together from man's point of view.
Yes, that would be a good way to put it.
And I can't help but bringing that up because one of my favorite passages these days is Romans 5. And we may or may not get into discussing it here. Hopefully the people that are taking this workshop and going through this exercise on the internet will, I would hope that we'll be introduced to Romans 5 in the message. Now that I brought it up, I'm probably going to have to talk about it sometime. But what I'm hearing, again, I need to go back to yours, is that you became really much more intentional and aware beginning the journey of being more vocal and attempting to put feelings and emotions into words. And that's been about an 11-year journey.
That would be true.
Yeah. And then if it's like most, it's a really up and down journey. It's not a plane or where you take off and boom. It really has a lot of high points and low points in that process.
I would kind of refer to it as a plane going in a circle with me hoping that it would land, only for it to touch down and take off again.
Right, yeah. Wow. Well, you and I have talked before we started this recording that there's been some folks that have come along and that have really been helpful to you, and whether you name them or not doesn't matter so much as the experience. But it's somebody that I've had a chance to spend some time with and had conversations with. And so, like, you referred to yourself almost as a grandson in some of this that's going on. With all that confusing, I won't ask you to summarize it, but tell me a little bit about your journey in that respect.
How that came about, my friend's first name is Ken, and I was involved with a church, and within that church got involved with a men's group where we were digging deeper.
Okay.
And taking a look back at our history and wound in our life and inviting Jesus to come into that experience and experience the truth of that. So in that, I needed someone that I could be honest with and share what was going on the inside as the Lord brought those things up. Now, I was able to do that with Laurie as well. But at the same time, getting a man's perspective was important.
Absolutely.
And the Lord provided Ken. I mean, it was kind of a hand-in-glove situation.
Yeah.
At first, I was really kind of shocked that a guy would actually want to spend that type of time and listen to my junk. And then only realizing that, he had similar junk, and we're kind of on the journey together. Yeah. So it was a comfort that way.
Yeah. So what you're making me aware of is that you had been rooting around a bit with a men's group and found out that there was things that you needed and wanted to now discover or begin to look at, and you also recognized the value of finding somebody, and Ken showed up on the scene. And as a consequence, with that openness, you found out that you weren't, I'm going to add some words, not as weird as you might have thought you were, because he too is weird. I happen to know him, but I know he's but I've always thought that about me, because I was raised on a farm. My only sibling was my brother, 6 years older, and yet I had a core value of faith, and Jesus was my friend, and didn't have that many people around other than I went to the same school and the same school building all 12 years. That's how small my world was. But Jesus was my friend, and I remember him still being the only one that I could cry out to and cry with, and still feel like I wasn't sure I was whole because I did that. I had the emotions. But I survived that, but I still recognize I have emotions, though sometimes people wouldn't know that based on the way they engage with me and the way I engage with them as an adult. And yet I too have feelings that I can't put in words that run out my eyeballs. And that's an okay thing for males. And I'm talking an awful lot more than I expect you to summarize right now, but let's hear more about your story and that journey.
Well, Dallas, as you were saying those things about the weirdness,
right?
what really struck me was the feelings I was having that someone was actually wanting to hear my stuff.
Yes.
As a, as I interact with people in ministry,
Right.
I mean, I love listening to other people.
Right.
And so I didn't think it was strange on that part that I'm doing it.
Right.
But when someone actually is listening to me,
Yes.
it was different for me.
Yeah, it was totally it was a different than anything you had actually experienced, because you hadn't experienced it. You're good as an observer of somebody else's activity, but for you to actually be engaged in that was, I'm going to use the word alarming, but it was significant. It was special. It was something that meant a lot, or has come to mean a lot.
It really has. And I kind of learned in that process that I actually use listening as a deflection of not talking about myself.
Aha. So you became to establish yourself as one who could listen to others, but was not something that you were actually engaged in yourself. What was this all like for you, Laurie, when all this was going on?
I was excited for Jeff.
Here we go.
I was excited for him to have somebody to process the things that the Lord was bringing up through the men's group, which is a pretty intensive group, and a lot of that happens in there. But I was surprised by his response. Also feeling bad that I wasn't the type of listener for him, but understanding also that, a male is so valuable for another male.
Yeah, I want to put you on pause there a bit, because I think that's interesting, and your candor about how you had mixed response when he found himself wanting and engaging with men and was not looking to you possibly, that there was a bit of angst for you when that took place. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of times guys don't know how to do it themselves, and then they're also concerned how their spouses are going to respond. If I build some deeper relationships with my friends, or when that begins to happen, because it does create some change in the dynamics of the relationship.
Well, and it definitely does in ours, because he works hard at being the listener and
Right.
has gotten all the good input about not trying to be a fixer,
Right.
but has been mostly a sounding board.
Yes.
Then I'm used to doing most of the talking. And so a little bit threatening, but the Lord
Sure.
had me on my own journey of beginning to understand the necessity of it. So, and we saw the Lord do some breakthroughs for him.
Mm-hmm. So it was mixed. Like any
Yes.
change, it brings about mixed impact. And the fact that you can see it and talk about it, and hopefully others who hear this conversation will recognize it is part of the journey. It's just like I say, Nancy and I have been married 56 years. Well, we are not alike. We are wired differently. We have a lot of learning opportunities, not of crazy kinds of things, but just the more subtle pieces of being different and how we process information. And using these communication skills that Nancy wrote the book on, she's the scribe, and yet we are challenged to practice what we know. And we really recognize that it does take us allowing ourselves to live out of our identity that's offered to us by Christ, to then be anchored. Then we can actually be more effective in giving the gift of listening to each other. Like I would suspect, Jeff, you might have found it easier to listen to others than maybe your spouse. I mean, that's a pretty common dilemma, but it's not saying that was true for you. But I know I'd need to have other people who listen to me besides Nancy. And I tell Nancy, she doesn't know how much that saves her from having to listen to me think out loud, hear my own thinking, and recognize it's about me. It's not about my relationship. It's really about me. And I need to hear others just respond and reflect what I'm saying. I don't need their help either, but I need to be heard.